Today, I want to talk about the hellscape that is technical diagramming, right? Everybody's nodding their heads right now, And there is a potential solution that I want to share. There was one name that several people brought up. I did some digging, and it's kind of nuts how much this program Miro has for developers. I have to share this. It could potentially be a game changer for you. So my favorite part about Miro is that half the work is already done. Like right now, typically we spend hours starting diagrams from scratch, right? Gathering information, you get buy-in from every team. Following up, that's a lot of work to do. But Miro has a full set of integrations with the tools you're probably already using. And they also offer open APIs and SDKs for custom solutions for all those niche diagramming use cases we have to do, right? So the end result is the same, but it doesn't take forever. It's a massive, massive time saver. I'm transforming basic flowcharts and network architectures, and it all lives in one place. So are you using Miro? Have you used it? I want to hear.
Go! Kick ahead, and Duffy's chasing it. The bounce sits up. The Dragons are steamrolling to week 2 of the finals.
Inside the last 10 seconds of the game, St George, Illawarra to the death, trying. Brown goes to the air. Going back is Mabon, leaping high and taking it in marvellous fashion with Rod Wishart. He has scored an incredible try and ties this small game up. Bartram from 18 metres out, he strikes it nicely. St George Illawarra win for the first time in their premiership life. Here's Nathan Blacklock down the sideline, chipping over the top of Joel Kane. Got a room service bounce to win the game for the Dragons and book himself a New South Wales Blues Origin jump.
Well, it's showtime, folks. Time for round 1 and excitement for Dragons footy as we welcome you to episode 216 of the Red V podcast. Jack Clifton and Curtis Woodward are here with you to guide you through everything about the mighty St George Illawarra Dragons. And gee, it's been a very, very long off-season, but finally all the trials are behind us, all of that pre-season training, all of the talk in the media is in the rear vision mirror as we get ready for the Dragons' first official game of season 2024, doing battle with the Gold Coast Titans up there on the Sunshine Strip in a few short days, Saturday night to be exact there. So very excited to bring you the podcast this week. We're going to have a full comprehensive preview of that game. Myself and Curtis are going to break it down and kind of see where the big challenges are going to be and the big matchups for the Dragons in Saturday night's contest. We're going to do a review of that team list that was just recently announced. The first, I guess, official NRL team list that Shane Flanagan has spoken about and has released in his tenure as coach of the Dragons. Also going to wrap up your latest Dragons news. We're going to have some bold predictions about the Dragons in 2024, a bunch of quick fun questions to run through. Young Steelers half Cade Reed is going to drop by for a chat and we'll answer your fans' corner questions and also have some Dragons history to round out the podcast here tonight. Kurt Woodward is alongside me in virtual form, I guess, in terms of the telephone to talk everything St George Illawarra. We've had a bit of a taste of rugby league over Sunday afternoon, Kurt, but gee, these rusted on Red V fans, they're excited for some real footy to take place on Saturday evening, I should say, and it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast again, brother. How are you travelling on this Tuesday night?
Very good, Mr. Clifton. Very excited. Round 1 continues this weekend. The Dragons obviously have a big game on Saturday night on the Gold Coast against the Titans. Look, I've been saying to friends and family over the weekend, watching jealously at these other clubs that got to play in Las Vegas over the weekend. It is a 5-year deal the NRL has with the Vegas Sports Commission or Nevada Tourism, whatever it might be. So, look, the dream is that by the 5th year, maximum the 5th year, we're talking the Dragons and West Tigers being
let's go
further up the table where, you talk about some big clubs in the NRL right now, and I'll use that inverted commas, Manly, seriously. And look, some tourism and people over there from Australia, but you imagine West Tigers and Dragons as potential candidates or contenders for the title with the next 4 years. Imagine the tourism and what, two of the biggest fan bases in Sydney in the NRL. That is a dream for me. That would be awesome to see at least at least one of the clubs over there anyway by the 5th year. You'd hope.
Yes.
Something.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I think that's the excitement about, hopefully seeing both of our sides improve. And I think that's where we get a good perspective from you, Kurt, not just being someone that has grown up and has an appreciation for the Dragons and the local St. George area and that kind of stuff. But, yeah, the Tigers and the Dragons have a lot of similarities, being joint ventures and a bit of infighting at board level and sometimes infighting between fans, but also two sides that have kind of found themselves kind of rooted to mediocrity and down the bottom of the table. So I guess the hope for both our fan bases is that, there'll be a day when we're talking about a elimination final between the Dragons and the Tigers, or a preliminary final between the Dragons and the Tigers like there was in 2010. That's the hope.
You've done that to me now on air within 2 minutes and off air 2 minutes ago. You've broken my heart twice in 4 minutes, Jack.
Oh, well, why don't we talk, qualifying final, like in 2011 when you beat us at the Old City Footy Stadium. Does that make you feel better, Kurt?
No,
will that dry the tears from your eyes?
On 80 minutes. No, I don't want to talk about 2011 either. Play on. Go the Dragons.
Looking forward to a big podcast episode tonight. We've got lots to get through, folks, so let's not waste any more time. Let's jump in and take a look at your Dragons news and updates for this week. Well, let's kick it off by taking a look at the team list that was named only a few short hours ago by head coach Shane Flanagan. Not a whole lot of surprises in the 17 or the 23 that have been named by Flano here, Kurt. I guess the big talking points, and we'll kind of focus on Blake Laurie and Jacob Little in our next news segment. They've both been named despite being under injury clouds. Obviously, no Luciano Leilua. We've also got some news on him that we'll talk about in just a moment. But also no Hame Sele. We thought that he would be a lock to start round one. The Dragons have got him listed in the casualty ward as returning in round 2 from a hamstring injury. Missing a couple of players there, the Dragons, in Sele and Leilua. If they were to lose Laurie and Little, it would certainly kind of, have put all hands on deck for the Dragons. But in regards to all of the other players named, pretty similar to what we saw trot out against the Tigers a couple of weeks ago. We'll run through them 1 through 17 for the Dragons. Tyrell Sloan at fullback, the wingers Zach Lomax and Michaeli Ravalawa, Moses Sully and Jack Bird the centres, Kyle Flanagan 5'8", Ben Hunt is half and captain, Francis Molo and Blake Laurie named in the front row alongside Jacob Little, although that could change a little bit closer to Saturday night. Tom Eisenhuth gets the second row position alongside Jaden Sewer, and Jack DeBellin is the lock. The bench currently Connor Mulhausen 14, Michael Molo 15, Villiamo Fafita will get a first grade debut in jersey 16 alongside the new signing Raymond Fatala Mariner. The reserves currently Ben Merck-Masila 18, Christian Tupulotu 19, Jesse Marshke 20, Ryan Couchman 21, and Matt Fierney in 22. So I'd imagine if Laurie did fall out of the squad, then you would expect probably Fafita to start and Murdoch-Masila to join the bench. And if we don't see Jacob Little, then I'd say Jesse Marshke will come into the reckoning on the bench. But that is still to be confirmed a little bit closer to kickoff. Kurt, your initial kind of thoughts and your feedback on this Dragons side that's named. I think a lot of fans probably thought it would be the same outside of a Leilua or a Sele breaking into that side, a pretty similar side to the one we saw get the trial win over the Tigers a couple of Saturdays ago.
Yeah, look, I love the fact that they've stuck to their guns and gone from basically week 1 of the preseason challenge with the same game plan and basically the same team. And look, the most important thing which we've touched on is they have improved every week. So why change what they are doing? It's not a finished product, but I can promise you that the Titans aren't anywhere near where Des Hasler would like his side to be either. So I think, and I know you're pumped for this weekend, Jack. I think it's going to be a very interesting game. I think it's going to be flip of the coin, and I'm sure we're going to get to your next question in a second. But I think a little bit will be played on the fact of maybe, look, if you miss 2 of you guys under injury, that's one thing. But if one can make it, and you may be guessing which one I hope this Saturday night, that may make the difference. So we'll see what happens. But look, it's a good-looking team, and I look, there's a lot of questions around the side still, but at least they've gone through preseason with the same team, and they're getting better. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, probably the best side that Shane Flanagan could possibly name. Considering there is injury and suspension to Sele and Leilua, you would assume that they would break into that 17 and effectively immediately when they are available. But yeah, a couple of new signings in there. Obviously, the likes of Tom Eisenhuth, I think, going to add some toughness and some real value into that edge back row position. And even someone like Villian Fafita alongside Raymond Fatala-Mariner, the depth at the Dragons is far greater than it was this time 12 months ago, and even kind of looking back on the side that was named to play in the last game of the season under the interim coach Ryan Carr last year. So yeah, excitement. I think every fan base gets excited at this stage of the season. I think we've always been excited for round one, the Dragons, but I think there's a different feeling around the club, a different buzz. Certainly a lot of positivity around what Shane Flanagan's done with the culture, with the players that he signed. So it's going to be a fascinating clash on Saturday night against the Gold Coast up there at Seabus Super Stadium. Jacob Little and Blake Laurie, they're the two players that are going to be racing the clock to be fit. Laurie has that rib injury that he picked up in the match against the West Tigers. That rib cartilage concern. They potentially may be resting him for another week to try and get that right. The last thing that the Dragons want is to have someone like Blake Laurie ruled out for a long, extended period. Often we see players kind of, find their way through the pain threshold with those kind of injuries, but that's more kind of when you're a third of the way or half away or 3/4 of the way through the season. I think, the fact that it's come prior to round one, trying to get that right. And for Jacob Little, a hamstring strain. I heard early in the week that Little was more of a chance of playing than Laurie was, although I don't know on what authority that news was trickling through. Regardless, it would be a blow to the Dragons if they were to miss one of those, let alone both of those, Kurt. I think Little a bit more valuable than Laurie, although considering the thin front row stocks the Dragons have and the fact that Laurie has kind of anointed himself as a bit of a leader, a bit more of an experienced player with the Dragons, I'm sure he wants to be out there on Saturday night. Ben Murdoch-Masila, I've got no concerns with him. I think he would do an okay job, but you always want your best players there. So I imagine they'll kind of give them up to maybe even the 24-hour warning when players have to be trimmed from the extended bench. And I guess when you've got two players, that kind of complicates things. If you only had one, then obviously you could make your Jesse Marshke your 18th man or 19th man, and do the same with Blake Laurie, with carrying a Ben Murdoch-Masila or someone else that is like that. But the Dragons are dealing with a dual injury crisis, so don't necessarily have that comfort. It would be a big loss if both these guys miss the round one clash against the Dragons, which the Dragons obviously want to try and win and want to start the season well, Kurt.
Yeah, look, I look at this a little bit differently, and I look at them as separate cases. Blake Laurie, if he's carrying a rib cartilage issue into round one, and he's your starting prop, I can't even take him on the trip to the Gold Coast. I wouldn't even put him on the plane. I'd take him through his paces maybe tomorrow, full contact, and have his opposition first grade players, really ripping in a full contact session. And if he can't get through that, I wouldn't take him. Little's a little bit different in the fact that, from what I understand, and it is a slight hamstring issue. Is that right, Jack?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the fact that they're taking Mulhausen on the bench as well. Look, I understand that I want Jacob Little to play 80 minutes a game, because he'll be, if he can get through 80 minutes every week, you're going to be a better team. But the fact that it's the start of the season, you've got to count your chips and say, all right, let's be smart here. I wouldn't take Laurie at all. And look, have I missed something with yourself, Jack, and Dragons fans when it comes to Ben Murdoch-Masila? Because I had him in my starting team, particularly in the middle as a front rower, just because he's a little bit more damaging and a little bit more dangerous with his footwork. And if he does get angry, he can do a few different things, ball in hand or defensively. I'm surprised, man. So maybe you're a little bit closer to the ground than I am. But I see it as, if Blake Laurie can't get through training, say, tomorrow, and I assume they're going to fly out probably Friday for a Saturday night game on the Gold Coast, I'd be really ripping into Laurie and saying, if you want to play Saturday night, we're going to run some big bodies at you. Here come the Molo boys and all the rest.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready for round one, then look, have a break. It's only round one. It's the first game of the season where I think Jacob Little's a little bit more important because he's part of that streamlined attack that I think Shane Flanagan's trying to get to. So
Yeah.
and you can cover Little with Mulhausen, sorry. But look, that goes back to my question again. And I've been raising my eyebrows the last couple of weeks, not just you, Jack, on the podcast, but Dragons fans in general on social media. Everyone's gone off Murdoch-Masila. Is there something there that I don't know about? Because I think he could be one of your most dangerous forwards this year.
I think it's probably a combination of things. I think he's kind of fallen down the pecking order in terms of some of the other players at the club. Like I thought Michael Molo put in a really good shift in that match against the Tigers, so he's probably fallen behind Michael Molo a little bit. But when you throw in kind of Blake Laurie, Francis Molo, Hame Sele in there, and then obviously Luciano Leilua, like I know that they're not necessarily playing the same position, although we have seen Murdoch-Masila mainly play on the edge. I actually thought he was a bona fide prop forward, but I kind of went through and looked at the stats, and he's actually played most of his career on the edge, and then has obviously had times where he's played off the bench as well. So, like I think he's probably just fallen down the pecking order a bit. I still think he can add some value to the Dragons, and I think it's probably just a case, Kurt, of the fact that the Dragons have been able to add some more depth in the forward pack where, you've got a Ben Murdoch-Masila that's wearing jersey kind of 18 or 19 and might play a bit more in the New South Wales Cup this year. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. I think he adds good depth, and I think when called upon, he'll do a serviceable enough job. But I guess Flanagan just kind of has a few guys ahead of him at the moment.
Yeah, look, I guess I can agree with that. But from the guys that I can see, like the Molo boys, particularly what I saw in the preseason about the way that the Dragons are trying to play and really direct and really dig in and hurt some guys with the ball under their wing rather than just do it defensively. I just feel like Murdoch-Masila can do something a little bit different that the middle forwards can't do. But look, at the end of the day, I'll go back to it again. I think Laurie needs to get tested before they fly to the Gold Coast. And I would even go as far, and obviously Shane Flanagan's thinking a little bit differently, maybe, to a lot of the Dragons fans who agree with Flanagan maybe as well, is that if Laurie is not up for this weekend, even if he says he is, that is a big Titans pack. And I've said a lot in the off-season that the Dragons have to be very smart between the ears tactically week to week with who they play, depending on who they play. You look at that Titans pack and a bit of that shift work they can do with their feet just before the line. I think, you know what, if Murdoch-Masila is not part of the Dragons plan moving forward as a legitimate starter every week, but potentially like a 17th, 18th man, I think this would be the perfect weekend to help the Dragons off to a good start to the year, which might fire him up and change a few minds in the Dragons community. But, look, to get back to the original question, Little you can carry with a hamstring issue because he can get through the game or at least half the game and offer that dangerous direct attack that's going to release other players. But with Blake Laurie, like his biggest strength, because he's such a short, kind of Danny Nutley, kind of, even Shane Webke-esque, in the sense that his biggest pro that he has, the best thing he's got going for him is maybe his guts, and that he's quick enough over 5 to 10 meters. If he's getting hit early and getting hit hard, he's going to be dominated by bigger bodies over the top, and he won't get those quick play the balls. So if Flanagan can't start the season with him if he can't get through training. So I'll be very interested to see what happens in the next couple of days, particularly getting reports out of Dragons HQ when it comes to if he can get through training and fly up to face the Titans.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it is right at the start of the season, even if he has to sit out for the first 3 or 4 games, it's worth it. The last thing that you want is to take Laurie into that kind of game, aggravates the injury, or if he doesn't aggravate the injury but stays out there and he's just not 100% and he's just being run over the top of and missing tackles and giving away penalties, it's just not going to help the Dragons. And I think that like we've kind of said, like what you've said about Bernard Masilla, I think he adds a bit of punch if he comes in, and you've also got Viliami Fafita there as well. Francis Molo, who I thought has been been really good in the preseason. He's trimmed down. He's put on muscle. He's looked superb. And I think, Michael Myers. So I think you've got enough bodies there. We'll obviously talk about it more in our match preview. But no Jaden Campbell for the Titans. No David Fafita either. I think the Dragons have more than enough in their pack to kind of match it with some of those guys from the Gold Coast Titans. Some other news that is trickled through only about an hour or so ago online was David Riccio of the Daily Telegraph reporting that the two-match ban that was originally slated for Luciano Leilua for not declaring to the NRL Integrity Unit that he'd been arrested and charged with a DUI investigation and case has been reduced to a one-match ban on appeal. So it means that Leilua will be eligible for selection for the Dragons match next week, next Sunday night up there in Redcliffe against the Dolphins. So that's a massive boost for the Dragons. News kind of dropped, I think it was about a day or so after we recorded the podcast last week, Kurt, where we found out that it was a two-match ban. We've obviously since known that that's been reduced to a one-match ban, and that's a positive thing for the Dragons. They don't have a lot of success in dealing with the NRL, whether it's at the judiciary or dealing with fines and different things, but this is a little victory for the Dragons, and the earlier you can get Luciano Leilua on the pitch, the better. He's obviously had a week or so of pre-season training. He'll has done another week this week, and then we'll have the week next week leading into the Sunday night game against the Dolphins. So that's positive news for the Red V moving forward.
Good news in the fact that he'll get a game next week, I think, in my opinion, but I don't think he'll be playing NRL next week. From what I understand and what's been bandied about is that while he was up still looking for a new contract to get out of the Cowboys, he didn't train for about maybe 4 to 5, 6 weeks. So I don't know if he's going to be in shape to play if he was ready for the NRL anyway. So
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so look, if he needs a few weeks to get back in shape, it's good the fact that he could get back on the field. I dare say if he needs to get back in shape, Shane Flanagan's not going to let him play and walk straight back into the NRL team. But we'll see what happens.
I guess it all depends on what happens on Saturday night as well. Because if the Dragons come out, if they gutter stomp the Titans and their forward pack does an amazing job and they win relatively comfortably, then there's probably no need to rush Leilua back, and you could maybe have another week of preseason training and then potentially kind of play him in the New South Wales Cup as well a little bit, Kurt. But I guess on the other hand, if the Dragons really struggle and they kind of get out muscled on Saturday, then there might be a bit of pressure to perhaps bring him back next week.
No, look, I can see both arguments. I really can. Look, and again, it's a $64,000 question is how fit did he keep himself off the field when he was stood down by the Cowboys?
And how many minutes do they want to play him? Like if he plays next week, Kurt, then he's not necessarily going to be starting on the left edge playing 80 minutes. He might get 24 minutes or 28 minutes off the bench. So I guess it's to see how much they can actually get out of him. And like you said, how fit is he actually after potentially not training for 4 to 6 weeks?
Oh, agreed. And maybe that's an early test of how quickly Shane Flanagan would blink. I dare say Flanagan might have a plan in place for the big Luch. And if that has to come to the New South Wales Cup for a couple of weeks, so, but look, if I was Shane Flanagan, if I was pretending to be Shane Flanagan for a second, I would still not rush him in, even if it is a big loss on the weekend against the Gold Coast Titans, which I don't think it will be. I think it'll be a great game of footy. I would still be looking at a couple of blokes that kind of played their hand a little bit last year, a couple of blokes like Clifton and guys like that. I'd rather play them first and give them a bit of confidence about the fact that, yes, they are in line, that they're ready to play. I'm just worried about his fitness. That's the big thing. And look, you could play him for 20 minutes, but I worry about him in defence. So if he's completely fit, absolutely, he's in the 17 somewhere. But let's just see where we go next week. But look, if it depends on how the Dragons go this weekend, I'm not too worried about that. I think Flanagan understands that his team will perform for him, particularly considering it's round 1. So I think they're going to be okay for a few weeks at least. Get him fit, and kind of, like we've talked before, Jack. You've talked ad nauseum about guys that Flanagan have brought to the Sharks. At Cronulla, he brought them in, got them fit, and he will do a job for the Dragons. I just think it's a little bit too early. I think he's, his dad's sick as well.
Yeah.
I understand his dad's like really bad. So, no, there might be a little bit more to this. I think it might be a few more weeks than Dragons fans might actually think before he gets on the field in the first grade team anyway.
Yeah, it's an exciting prospect, isn't it? That the Dragons are going to run out there today on Saturday, potentially without Laurie. Although we're hoping that he may be fit, but certainly without Luciano Leilua and Hame Sele. And then if they can put together a good shift without those guys, it really kind of builds the excitement that you're bringing in two kind of top quality forwards that can improve the side tenfold. So certainly exciting. And good news for the Dragons because like we say, even if he doesn't play first grade, the fact that ban has been halved to a one-game ban means that he might get a chance to play a little bit of New South Wales Cup for the Dragons, and of course we'll have a look at the Dragons reserve grade side and their lineup a little bit later on in the podcast. The only other news to speak of, and there hasn't been that much this week, is in regards to Paul Turner. He's currently part of the Dragons top 30, but English publications are reporting that he looks like making a move fairly imminent across to the UK into the Super League. There's a few sides sniffing around, but it looks as if the Featherstone Rovers are the most likely destination for him. So that would obviously open up a top 30 spot for the Dragons. Not necessarily saying the Dragons are getting him off the books to potentially sign someone. I think it's probably more at the other end of the scale with Paul Turner obviously having played most of last season in reserve grade. I think he only played one or maybe two games of first grade with the Dragons last year, and obviously with the added depth and players that have been signed, probably not going to get too much of a look in. He's played a bit of fullback. He's played a little bit of in that 5'8" halfback role, but I think with Jesse Marschke, he's obviously ahead of him in the pecking order. Flanagan, Hunt also in the halves, and then in the fullback role, obviously Tyrell Sloan and Zach Lomax, the top two picks, rather than a Paul Turner potentially breaking himself in. So he's obviously posturing for a move over to the Super League, as a lot of these players do when they can't break back into an NRL outfit. So we'll have some more updates on that as it comes, but it would open up a spot in the top 30, and as I said, not necessarily means the Dragons are going to sign someone. It could be upgrading one of these younger players or one of these players in the reserve grade system into that top 30 spot, perhaps adding a little bit of depth somewhere else in the Dragons system. So we'll keep tabs on that over the next couple of weeks, and obviously have updates for you either on the podcast or on our social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Well, let's celebrate some birthdays this week. We're talking a few former St. George and St. George Illawarra representatives, including our former Illawarra representative as well. But the first person we're going to celebrate who celebrates his 59th birthday today is former St. George halfback Steve Linnane, who was part of the 1985 St. George Dragons side that made it to the grand final and lost to Canterbury by 7 points to 6. He was actually the Dragons' leading try scorer in that season, where he scored 16 tries, which really is quite incredible for a halfback to be scoring that amount of tries, especially back then and with the old 5-metre rule in the 1980s. He was initially born in Sydney and grew up in Sydney, and then played as a junior out in Dubbo in central west New South Wales. Was graded by South in 1983, but then went across to the Dragons the following year and had a wonderful campaign. He actually won the Dally M Rookie of the Year in 1985, but unfortunately a little bit later some disciplinary things happened. He was fired or sacked from the Dragons in 1990 for poor behaviour, and prior to that, some kind of older fans will remember him being suspended or outed for 22 weeks. I think it was 16 weeks or 22 weeks. It was a very long ban for the eye gouging on Fox Sports commentator Greg Alexander, which obviously as we know now with the stuff that's going on with the Roosters and Brisbane and what happened on the weekend, stuff like that needs to be eradicated from the game, and that's exactly what happened with eye gouging, which was pretty popular in the 1980s for a particular amount of players. But so he found himself out of the Dragons by the end of the 1990 season. He picked up with the Newcastle Knights and played a couple of seasons there, and then went off into the coaching realm. But we did want to celebrate him because he did have a fine career from 1984 to 1990, played with the Dragons. As I mentioned, 17 tries in 1985, and then finished his career with the Knights in 91, where he played 18 games. He played an even 100 games for the Red V, 18 for the Knights, and a total of 118 games where he totaled 25 tries. So very happy birthday to Steve today. I believe he still lives up in the Newcastle Hunter region, and hope he's enjoying his 59th birthday. Another player that is celebrating a birthday this week, it's coming up in just a couple of short days. On Thursday, he'll be turning the grand old age of 92, and it's former St George 5'8", Peter Carroll, one of the few players that is still around from that 1956 to 1966 run. Pete Carroll was a wonderful player in his day. One that is still highly regarded by a lot of historians and students of the game. He actually played in the first two grand final wins, which makes it even more phenomenal that there's guys that played for St George in 1965 and 1966 in the last couple of premiership runs in that 11 in a row that aren't with us anymore. But he is still with us, having played in the 1956 and 1957 sides. He played 100 games over his career, which spanned between 1951 and 1959. He played 20 games for the Dragons in 1958. That was the year that St George went undefeated throughout the season, as he played in 20 games. He won 17 and drew just the one there, so that was a wonderful performance for him. He also played in the sides of 56 and 57, and then played just the one game in 1959. So 100 games for him. Went off and captain coach, moved to some regional areas as well, as he finished on an even 100 games for the Red V, including scoring 24 tries. He played one game for the Australian probable side, or the what we would now call the Prime Minister's 13, or an Australian A side, and he also played one game for the New South Wales City Seconds in 1958. And Kurt, we love doing this, and we obviously talk about these players from the 50s and 60s quite often, but there probably hasn't been too many times we've spoken about players that are actually still alive from that incredible run, and for a player to be on the stroke of turning 92 years of age, still with us, a legend of the St George Rugby League Club because of what that side did, I just think is such a cool little story to talk about.
Yeah, mate, look, happy birthday. And I was just kind of listening in there, and he's still with us, which is amazing. And I think I've said before on this podcast too, Jack, you're only dead the last time someone says your name. Yeah. So wherever he is, I hope his family have really, I hope they're football fans, firstly. Yeah. Because that really prolongs that kind of stuff. But look, mate, that's a great run. That's amazing. And I was just going to say, my grandma, she's about to push 100, and she's down in Kaima. But look, to be that old to play football at any level, and to get that at age, that's amazing. So
yeah.
If there is someone out from his family list that does listen to this podcast, legend, absolute legend. And it's just not fair, because we live in a world now with social media, and in kind of very short memory spans these days, where some people kind of don't acknowledge the past as much as they should. Yeah. But anyone that played the game at that level, congratulations to them, and happy birthday, sir.
And we often do have family members and friends of players. We spoke about Eddie Lumsden. It would have been a few months ago now, and I got and I sent it to you, Kurt, so you knew about it. But yeah, we got a private message. I think it might have been on Instagram from, I think, his granddaughter said that the family members listened to the podcast and really appreciated the way we spoke about him. And that's the thing. We're obviously talking about the current day Dragons, but without those players that played for, grew up in the Illawarra and played with St George, or were St George juniors and played for the Dragons, or played for the Dragons and the Steelers, and even the people that pulled on the first jerseys for St George Illawarra, very, very important people. And yeah, I'm just kind of looking at a few articles now, Kurt, and just thinking that Carroll was part of that 1956 side. And I bet if you create a time machine, jump back to, I don't know, pre-season training in 1956, and he interviewed guys like Peter Carroll and Ken Carney and, Norm Proven, those kind of guys. I'm sure they wouldn't imagine that was going to be the first of 11 consecutive premierships they were going to win. That 1956.
How many was he part of?
Peter Carroll. Yeah, Carroll played the first two. He played 1956 and 1957. Played a large portion of 1958, but didn't play in the grand final.
Can you imagine just being one of the legends of the club? That, I don't know if he went back year after year, or if he went out of the country, or where he's from or whatever. But imagine winning the first or second premiership and going, yeah, this is a pretty good dynasty we've already got. We've won 2 or 3 comps. But then you get older and you have some kids and you move away and you get a job or find a new wife or whatever. And to sit back and see this club go premiership to premiership to premiership. And to imagine, I'm trying to put it in perspective really quickly off the top of my head, what it would be like to see them in the modern day. Can you imagine a sports team? Like you think of the Harlem Globetrotters, which is a bit of a joke act now, but the All Blacks when they went on their almighty run, or the Australian cricket team under Steve Waugh, it's still not the same.
No, nothing compares.
Not.
Nothing compares.
This is literally like I want to be biased because I'm a rugby league guy, and to a certain extent, I'm a bit of a Pocket Dragons fan, but I can't think of another dynasty that went as long in a sporting sense that Australians can get behind as much as what the Dragons did. I can just imagine just being. Would you regret, Jack? Hypothetically, here's a question for you. You beat Carroll for a minute, right? And you win a couple of comps and kind of, you get pushed back because Face is boarding someone else. They've got to start reserve grade. They've got to play better than you. Then they get their chance. And it's almost like a tradesmanship.
Yeah.
And then you kind of retire or you fade away and your legs don't work as well as they did, or you like a beer more than you like training, which happens to a lot of us. And just things happen. You get older. It hurts too much when you wake up Monday morning. But then how would you look on that if you were part of that era and we're kind of not a part of the rest of the era? That would be such a strange...
Because it ran for so long as well.
It'd be a 50-50 thing too. To be like, it's almost like Isaac Luke or a Steve Price getting suspended for a grand final and you win it.
Yeah.
And you go there with your jersey on with your jeans. I don't know. How would you feel if that was you?
Oh, in Pete Carroll's situation, I'd probably still feel a part of it because you've, like, especially at the start of the dynasty, I feel like you've been a part of it from the start. Like, you're the one that helped get it started. Like, what do they say? The first one's always the hardest. So, I'm sure those guys would have wanted to play in all of them, but the game was so different back then as well. Like, to think that there were no substitutions, there were no bench players, so you pretty much had to be the best 13 players in the club, and you had all these young guys that were coming up from 21s or third grade or reserve grade that were always kind of gunning for your spot. You had to be at your best all the time. It would have been a probably anxious time to be a Dragons player as well. But yeah, like I'm sure if we went and interviewed Pete Carroll, he'd probably would say I would have loved to be part of all 11 of those premierships. But yeah, like I think being there at the start would have been pretty special as well.
And did you say, sorry, did you have as I do, I walk around the house with the phone on mute while you're chatting away. Did you say Ken Carney started in 56 as well?
He didn't start in 56. He'd been there from before, but he was the captain in 1956, yeah.
Okay. But that shows, like, confirming your point about maybe how ruthless or how the expectation of the club was. Where Carney didn't even get to finish out as a Dragon, and they brought in like Ian Walsh and what was that big pom that came over that and Billy Wilson thought it's time for me to go to the Bears. Was it Rasmussen or? Oh yeah,
Elton Rasmussen, yeah.
Oh, but he had to spend a year in reserve grade.
Yeah, a lot of them did.
He was an English international. He had to spend a whole year in reserve grade, apparently. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dragons Red V listeners, but that was the thing, and. If you look at kind of, I think Wayne Bennett kind of did the same thing at the Broncos. If Wally Lewis wasn't good enough, he sacked him. Gene Miles wasn't good enough, he got replaced. And he kept doing that over and over again. I can just imagine as a kid, even from the bush, and this is the time in the late 40s, through the 40s, into the 50s, there was no TV, there was no social media, there was no Twitter, there was no texting. There's no emails, but you knew if you were playing in Dubbo, Wagga, Bathurst, the Northern Rivers, if the Dragons came along with Frank Facer and his team of assistants in their bright red jackets, you knew who they were. Because the Dragons would win a premiership, and Facer would make him go out on a trip to the middle of the bush to play the Clayton Cup champions.
Yeah.
And he'd make him step off the bus in their red suits or their whatever, and there was like a travelling army of Dragons fans, and I think that's where it all came from. So, look, I've gone off on a tangent here, so we're just talking history now. But so I feel sorry for Pete Carroll. He's like, mate, I won a premiership. Leave me alone.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll go back to, sorry, Pete, you won a premiership. You're a good man. And anyone that won a premiership in that great era is a legend of the game. There's no other way about it. So I'm going to shut up for a minute because I can keep talking history forever.
Don't use up all your words, Kurt, because the last birthday we're celebrating is former Dragons forward Andrew Hart, who will be celebrating a birthday later this week. He'll be turning 45, 140 first grade games for him, Kurt. He started his career at the Steelers. Was part of the Dragons, St George Illawarra, when they had their first inaugural season in 1999. He played 16 games that year and then was a mainstay in 2000 and 2001, and then quite specially was part of the reformed South Side in 2002 and finished his career in 2003 before playing a dozen or so games with the London Broncos over in the UK Super League. Your memories of Andrew Hart, apart from getting in a punch-up at the St George Leagues car park with Lance Thompson?
I've got another punch up which I brought up before. I think we've done this before. I think it was Lamey with Hopewadi in the corner.
Yeah,
at Campbelltown Stadium.
West Tigers and St George. Yep.
I will say that as a youngster, so maybe around 12, 13, 14 years old, I rated Andrew Hart, particularly the Dragons, a big body that could potentially play second row if you need him to, but was just a big bopper and got through his work and played hard. I think, I don't know what happened with the Dragons, but I think it was part of that, the South comeback where George Piggins said, we don't have the money to buy the salary cap of the Broncos or the Roosters. So anyone that wants a game or a trial, you can be part of our squad for the new year. Was it 2002 or was he still at the Dragons in 2002?
No, I went to South in 2002, yeah.
Okay, so I have no idea what happened because he was worthy of a new contract at the Dragons in 2002. So someone out there in the Red V universe can let us know why he wasn't offered a new deal. But I thought he was a big body, ran hard, a bit like an Ashton Sims, got through his work, and just did his job. So the fact that he showed up at South in 2, I think they only actually spent. I think the only money they spent was on their captain, Adam Muir.
They didn't have a great side, did they?
No, they didn't. And I think George Pickens did that and said, look, we're back, but we're not going to spend any money. And they did trials, and Cam McInnes trials, and he went off to the Broncos. And anyway, but look, a really better than solid, a player you want in your 17. And I do say this a lot about your birthday boys on this podcast, Jack, but one of those guys you want on your team, because whether he's starting or he comes off the bench, I don't think Andrew Hart ever lost the Dragons a game, but he also, his work would have helped the Dragons win a lot of games as well. But you'd never see that. It's just, he was a toiler, worked hard, big bugger, and I would not run on him. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, no, he was one of those really solid players as well. I think, like we speak about often in this segment, having guys that are just crucial to your success. They know the job that's set in front of them, and he played a lot of his football at the Dragons from the bench. But he was one of those guys, like Ashton Sims was, and Justin Paul were in those early days to kind of come in and could do a role for the team and run through a brick wall for him, and you knew you're always going to get 25, 30, 35 good minutes from a bench player like that. So very happy birthday to Andrew Hart. Hope he's enjoying himself wherever he is. And we wish him a very happy birthday here from the Red V podcast. Before we finish off our Dragons news and updates, we do need to explain and give you an idea of who the Who Am I is this week on the Red V podcast. Now, we're going back to, not a non-obscure player, so a player that hopefully the general fan will be able to remember. This particular player did play a total of 91 first-grade games for the St. George Illawarra Dragons between 2016 and 2020. Before that, he spent 74 appearances and scored 30 tries for the Canterbury Bulldogs between 2011 and 2015. He went back to the Bulldogs in 2020 after leaving the Dragons, but only for 5 games. And then since then has been over in the UK playing with the Salford Red Devils, who he signed with in 2022, and he's still playing with. He's had 38 appearances for the Red Devils, scoring 12 tries. He's also represented his native Samoa at the highest level, making 18 appearances, scoring 9 tries and kicking 7 goals. Kurt, do you know who the Who Am I is this week, mate?
Mate, I haven't watched the Super League in about 10,000 years.
Well, you don't need to watch the Super League, but if you watch the Dragons or the Dogs, like I don't want to give away the position because I think that will certainly reveal all. He was a goal kicker. Goal kicker, Samoa, played with the Dragons.
Why do I not know this? That's why I should Google Jack, then I'll sound better. Can I take Zion Quinn from the WWE?
Yeah.
No, he never played for the Bulldogs and he never goal kicked. No, I'll leave it for everybody else.
Well, just to let you know that this particular player, he did attend Sarah Redfern High School, and he plays junior football for the Minto Cobras.
Got it.
Mate, as soon as I mention anything from Southwest Sydney, you get it. I think that's the first clue I've got to go with each week.
Well, guys, if you don't know, I also run a page called the MacArthur Rugby League Wrap.
He also played for the Campbelltown Warriors.
He certainly did. He did. But should I leave it for everyone else later? Or?
Yeah, leave it. But why did this particular player leave the Magpies, Harold Matts, and get signed by South? That's what I want to know.
Oh, well, that's like everyone that left the Magpies. You can talk about Ryan Hoffman. You can talk about Jared Hayne got lost.
Oh, here we go. This is going to lead into a Kurt rant about.
I could keep going. Anyway, let's move on.
We'll leave it at that. We'll reveal all. If you want a few more clues, we can give them to you, folks, but we'll give them to you right at the end of the podcast. Time for us to take our first break here on episode 216 of the Red V podcast. And after all of this, we're going to be chatting some of our previews. We're not just going to preview the match against the Gold Coast Titans on Saturday. Kurt and I are going to delve into some tricky questions that we've thought of about, what are some bold things that the Dragons players and team are going to do in season 2024.
Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you're ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
Join us today during the Jeep Celebration event. Right now, get 20% below MSRP for an average of $15,178 under MSRP on the purchase of a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland 4xE or Summit 4xE. Not compatible with lease offers or with any other consumer incentive offers. $15,178 average based on 20% below average MSRP from all 2023 Grand Cherokee Overland 4xE and Summit 4xE models in dealer stock. Residency restrictions apply. Take retail delivery from dealer stock by 4/1. Jeep is a registered trademark.
Something a little bit different, a little bit more fun here on the Red V podcast. We've thought of some fun, sharp, quick questioning for some predictions for 2024 for the Dragons. We're not going to spend too much time on this. We're not going to break down the questions and have great analysis. That's what the match preview against the Titans is for. But more so, we just wanted to jump on and give some of our predictions. And some of them might not come true. We'll look at them at September or October later this year, and we'll certainly know whether it was something like us blowing smoke out of our ass like we do most of the time, or whether it's something that has certainly come to fruition. So let's not waste any more time, Kurt. Let's jump into it. We'll both answer these questions, but I'll go to you first for number one. Which new signing will make the biggest impact this season for the Dragons?
Oh, okay. I'll be really quick because I think it's going to be, and it's going to sound really boring to fans, I think it's going to be a Cole Flanagan or an Eisenhuth. A quiet achiever that does things that you don't see or doesn't make the highlight reels, but makes the guys around them better. Eisenhuth will do things in the second row. Flanagan will do stuff at Ben Hunt. I wish there was someone else we could talk about right now, which makes it more exciting for the podcast. But I think the biggest impact is going to be the guys that are brought in to do certain jobs to make other guys look better.
For mine, I think either Sele or Leilua. I think, I'll probably go with Leilua because I've...
You're looking for impact. That's fair.
But also I'm personally invested in it as well, Kurt, because was a lot of negative comments from a lot of hack journalists about Leilua. So I've bookmarked those, much like I've bookmarked the Bulldogs and Sharks fans that said we're going to get the wooden spoon as well. So there's going to be some receipts given at the end of the season, regardless. Our second question, Kurt: who will be the Dragons' most important player this season?
Oh. Is it look? It's too boring for me to say Jacob Little again.
No, that's fine. I think that's a good answer.
No. I'm not. I'm going to say something more, maybe nauseating for Dragons fans. Ben Hunt.
Yeah, that was the first one I thought of. Yeah,
he's still your best. He's still your best player.
Yeah,
but I think in turn, with using the answer from number one, I think Little and Cole Flanagan will make Ben Hunt better this year. I hope.
Yeah.
So that's still my answer.
Yeah, Hunt was the first one I've thought of, but yeah, I would have Little in a fairly close second place because, like we spoke about last week, and I know we kind of joke about it and make fun about it, but I think he is integral to the success of the Dragons, especially in that starting hooker position. Number 3, this is a tricky one, Kurt. How many wins will the Dragons pick up this year? I'm going to go first. I'm going to say the Dragons are going to pick up 10 wins. I think they can win 10 games this year.
Look, I think, and I agree with you, I think 10 wins is the safe bet. If they can get 13, if they keep their players on the field, if they get 13 and they defend the way we expect they're going to defend because of what we've seen, defending the way they want to defend, if they can win 13 games, they're a chance to slip into the finals. But I'm kind of, I will go back with you, Jack. I'll say 10 to 12. Look, out of 24 games with a couple of buys, you're kind of there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
But I just want them to be competitive every week.
Yeah, totally.
That's it.
Which Dragons player will have a breakout performance this season? I'm kind of leaning towards Moses Sully. I think he's played well in patches for the Dragons, but we certainly haven't seen his best. I thought he was good when he first came over with in the Dragons. He was probably kind of in the top 3 kind of Dragons performers, and that was under Anthony Griffin. So from what I've kind of seen in preseason, I think he's going to be immense for the Dragons this year. He's going to have a breakout year, and I wouldn't be surprised if closely followed is Francis Molo. I know he's in a contract year, and that at times can kind of influence things, but I think he's going to have a huge year as well.
Yeah, don't question that, and I understand what you're saying, but I don't trust your Dragons as much as you do. So my answer would be Viliami Fafita.
Yeah.
With the hope that he has some support from some guys around him as he gets through the year.
Where will the Dragons' defence rank this season after having the worst defence in the competition last year, Kurt? Where do you think the Dragons are going to be? What number?
Oh, so they were legitimate 17 last year.
I think they were either 17th or 16th. We were right down the bottom.
Which is pretty bad. Look, I would say mid-table.
Yeah.
I think it's a good start, and I think they'll surprise and hurt a few teams physically. And when I say physically, I purposely wrote that after I said they'll hurt some teams because they're not going to win every game they play. But I think defensively, they are going to step up, I think, more than any other team in the comp this year.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get better structurally and actually start defending together. The worst thing I saw, and you spoke about, I think it was round 2, they go up to Redcliffe. And I didn't even see that, Jack. And you said that, and I Googled it while you were talking. And I couldn't believe, and maybe this is a sign of where the Dragons are at. So this might be a reality check for the Dragons fans or Red V listeners.
Yeah.
Is that if the Dragons are playing good football, if the Dragons are where they should be in the food chain of rugby league, that's a Suncorp Stadium game.
Mm.
But the Dolphins have put them in round 2 at Redcliffe. And last year, and which puts this in a nice little bow tie, you're talking about a defence last year and not defending together. they played okay. I think from memory, Buddy Sullivan done a couple of good things. I said, this is Sullivan's big game. And then I think it was a Tarek Sims and DeBellin on their try line. There was like a 20-metre gap, and someone just a prop ran through them. I think the Dragons players need to understand that they should be at Suncorp against the Dolphins. And I think it's an embarrassment that the Dragons are there 2 years in a row. I think the Dragons players should go, hang on, we're the Red V. This is a big marketing game because there's just as many Dragons supporters or members in Queensland, Southeast Queensland, than any other club, maybe bar Broncos and Souths. That's a huge game.
Yep.
But they're back at Redcliffe this year. I guarantee no one from the club or the players are listening to this podcast right now going, yeah, Curtis Woodward, the neutral West Tigers fan, bum journalist, is saying we should do this.
Yeah, but then someone will pipe up and say, oh, yeah, but he grew up on Gloucester Road in Hurstville, though.
Yeah, I did. And it was a beautiful place. But it was then anyway. But I think there's a goal there where if the Dragons if they get their shit together, that is a sold-out Suncorp game. And there's so many Dragons fans around the country that are ready to support the club again. So I don't know where I was going with that. Something Dolphins, embarrassment Dragons. But yeah, sorry, the defence thing. Yeah, so it was. I
love it, mate. I gave you direction. I said before we started recording. I said,
nice and quick.
We'll run through these quickly, and then
move on.
Well, I'll just give my opinion because I actually haven't had a chance to say it yet. So now I know what it's like for Tepra in the lounge room of the Woodward household over in Campbelltown. I think they'll finish 7th. I think they'll have the 7th best defence. So I think it's going to be a much more improved effort than last year. But they're obviously not going to...
Seventh, mate. If you're 7th, you make the finals.
Yeah, mate. Well, maybe I need to change my 10 wins to 18 wins for the Dragons this year, mate.
Oh, there you go. But look, at the end of the day, the Dragons defend well. That's the first thing they need to do. So if they get that right, who knows?
Number 6, Dragons young gun. Which player 21 or under will shine brightest this season for the club? I think... I'm still very high on Sevilla Tamale. I have doubts over whether Jack Bird's body is going to be able to hold up for 24 games in the season. So I think at some stage we'll probably see Tamale. I think he can have a breakout year. And if not him, then like Kurt mentioned before, I think Viliami Fafita, named on the bench. God knows why Manly let go of him and Tuatavake so they could get Aaron Woods. I still think that's a boneheaded decision that doesn't get spoken about enough. But yeah, I think there's a couple of young players really around the side that can really break out. Dylan Egan, probably another one. There's a few around there, but I think, if I was a betting man, Sevilla Tamale and Viliami Fafita are probably the two that I would be going for there. Number 7, who will be the standout forward for the Dragons in 2024, Kurt?
Jake Little.
Yep, okay. Well,
that's all I've got. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm probably like I spoke about Luciano before, but I still have massive raps on Hamasele. I don't think enough has been made of that signing by the Dragons. This is a guy that was a regular for South, played fairly big minutes for South. Because we haven't seen him in preseason training and because we're not going to see him in round 1 or preseason games, I should say, not training, preseason fixtures, and with the fact that he's not lining up in round 1, I feel like he's become the forgotten man a little bit, but he's an enforcer. He carries the ball so strongly. He can bend the line back and he's a really good defender in that middle third of the field. So yeah, I think at the end of the year, we're going to be talking about how valuable he is to the Dragons and what a kind of key performer he is. So yeah, for number 7, he's my standout forward. What about the back line, Kurt? Who's going to be the standout performer in the back line for the Dragons?
This is going to hurt your feelings, Jack.
Yeah.
Tyrrell Sloan.
Yeah, okay. Well, if he plays well, it's not going to hurt my feelings. I'll be issuing an apology. I
know. I'm not hurt your feelings. I know what you're trying to say. I get it. It's going to be the craziest ride that any Dragons fans ever had when it comes to a kid with mixed feelings. It's going to be like, one weekend he's your favourite son and you want to buy him everything and take him to the movies and say, great weekend, and give him the Macca's Award. There's going to be other weekends where you're going to hate him. But I think just the way the Dragons are this year, and I keep saying this, you can have bad weekends. You can have good weekends with the Dragons overall and win games.
Yeah.
And Sloane's going to have bad games in those good games. But it sounds confusing, but I just think that Sloane is going to do things and surprise you a little bit. But look, I'm sure you've got your response to that and your answer too. But when I look at that back line the way it is, I haven't seen anything in the preseason where I would love to write Ravalawa, because you can see what Parramatta did with Mika Sivo and Radradra before that, and all the Fijian legends that have played in the winging games before. That there's so many errors in what Ravalawa does still. And you told me the other day he's only 23, 24.
He's a bit older. I think he's 26. But yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, I did get that wrong.
sorry. No, sorry. But at 26, Jack, he should be one of the premier wingers in the comp, and he's still making mistakes. You got Lomax on the wing, who's got a back problem, but Flanagan wants to keep him out there because he needs to learn how to play another position. You got Sully, who I still don't trust, even though he looks fit as FUCK, and he looks like a beast. But I still can't trust Sully. So you look through the whole thing, and I think Sloane has the most upside. And Dragons fans might be banging their heads against the wall listening to this, but I still think he's your next superstar.
Well, I hope it comes to fruition, because if Tyrell Sloane has a year like that, Kurt, then we're going to be recording a podcast here in September talking about an elimination final or a qualifying final for the Dragons. Because I think if they can shore the back up with Sloaney there, then yeah, for sure. And for argument's sake, it's Moses Sully is the player that I think is gonna be the best performing back. I've seen enough from him. I think
he's so fit, isn't he?
I just think kind of mentally as well, Kurt, he's kind of on the right page. He seems to be really buying into what Flanagan's kind of selling at the Dragons. Obviously, a lot of talk because Fox Sports released that article about him giving up KFC and that kind of stuff. But I think it's more the mental aptitude that he's shown. He also said in that article that he doesn't want to play for another club. He wants to spend the rest of his career at the Dragons, and I think that's a really mature thing that not many players have said before. So yeah, for mine, I think he is going to be the standout performer in the. I
think it's a fair call, Jake. I think I like that, but I just don't trust it yet. If I see it the first look, ask me in 8 weeks what I think Moses Sully, and I might be saying he might be playing for New South Wales.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that's what he's got in his body. If he gets it right, but I just can't trust it yet.
And the last question, a fun one. I'll go first, Kurt, maybe just to give you a bit more time, but give us one bold prediction for the upcoming season that other people are not talking about. Well, my bold prediction is that the Dragons are going to do the double over that meme club over in the Sutherland Shire called Cronulla. We'll beat them down at Wollongong. We'll also beat them at their home ground. I'm not going to go bold and saying, Dragons are going to play finals or anything like that, but I see us doing the double over Cronulla. And the other thing, it's probably a bit more of a subjective point of view, but I think by the end of the year, people will be talking about Shane Flanagan not only as coach of the year, but I think everyone will be waxing lyrical about how the Dragons are one of the most attractive sides to watch each week.
I love that. I love it, Jack. I love it. I will go. I've got a couple here. I'm going to go. The Dragons will beat both last year's grand finalists.
Yeah, I love that.
During the season. May not play finals, but give the team hope and the fans hope. And one of their outside backs, if they stay fit, plays Origin this year.
Love that.
And look, again, it could be Sully, it could be Lomax, to the point where, if it was Brad Fittler, he'd probably have Sloane at starting fullback right now. But I just think there is upside there to the team. But we're talking a different way now than we were in off season. But I think there's upside to the team. Look, Sully's fit. They're trying different things with Lomax. I know you're not started on Sloane, Jack. I get it completely. And look, you remember too, I was I was like complete team Cody Ramsey last year.
Definitely.
I was like, that guy is Ryan Pappenhausen. Like, you guys are going to make the 8 with him. Then he got buckled. So there's enough there this year that there's going to be good things happen, but just take the good with the bad, and I think you're going to enjoy some good times this year.
Yeah, most excited we've been for a long time, which I think is a good thing as a Dragons fan. Plenty of positivity around the club, which is a really good thing. We're going to take another break here on the Red V podcast, and then myself and Kurt are going to get our analysis hat on. We're going to take a look at the match against the Gold Coast Titans, kicking off the 2024 season for the Dragons. That's next here on the Red V podcast. You're listening to the Red V podcast. Jack Clifton and Curtis Woodward wrapping up everything about the mighty St. George Illawarra Dragons. Well, it's match review time, the first NRL match that we've had the pleasure of previewing this year for season 2024, and it sees the Dragons locking horns with the Gold Coast Titans this Saturday night up there on the Gold Coast, a side that the Dragons played for the first game of the season last year, and to be fair, probably should have beaten them in both contests. Went down in the second contest, which was up on the Gold Coast, and won the their opening game of the season in round 2 down at Cogra Oval. So yeah, probably not the worst side to face in round 1 for the Dragons. It's certainly not a Penrith, it's not a Sydney Roosters, it's not a Melbourne or a Brisbane, but even though it will be a side that is going to be challenging, probably one of the best opening round opponents the Dragons could possibly have. And I guess, Kurt, I'm just kind of reiterating the point that myself and a lot of other Dragons fans just excited for the season. I don't think this has been around for probably the last 5 or so years, and I'm just excited to see the side run out, just like I was excited to see them run out against South in the Charity Shield, and I was excited to see them play against the Tigers out at Mudgee. That excitement, I've kind of got butterflies in the stomach. I'm just looking forward to seeing the boys run out. And yeah, I guess for the first time in a long time, and this will probably change throughout the season as they develop and they build on the progress that they make and win games. I'm proud to be a Dragons fan, because I can't say I always felt like that last year. I'm proud of what Shane Flanagan's building, and I hope it's something that can continue potentially with a victory against the Titans on Saturday night.
Yeah, Jack, look, I saw what you saw on the run sheet as well about the physicality of the game too, so I'll try to include my answer in both there. How physical do the Dragons have to be? They've got to be the most physical they can be. That's how the Dragons are going to win games this year. They need to be more intense than the opposition, and that won't always get them over the line each week, but that's the Dragons this year. It is... Whatever you're doing, if you're not good enough as a whole, collectively, talent-wise, you just have to hit them as hard as you can and play hard football, which the Dragons haven't done for a long time. Look, the good thing for me is, yes, the Titans have a great pack, but it's the Gold Coast. So
yeah,
everyone seems to be waiting for the sleeping giant to awake and be a powerhouse again, like they were when they came into the comp. I think the first year they were pretty good. They had Matt Rogers playing 5'8", Preston Campbell. They had a really good pack and some good outside backs. I think they made a prelim final.
Yeah.
But to me, Jack, the most juicy thing for me this weekend, just looking at the TAB, the Dragons are $2.55.
That's outrageous. It's outrageous, Kurt.
Ridiculous.
Like
I'm already on, Jack. I'm already on at 50. So,
like I look at the Gold Coast side, and yeah, their front row's good. You got Mo Fotuaika and Tino Fa'asuamaleaui. Chris Randall,
But how much finals football have those blokes played?
Well, no, I'm just saying, on paper, those guys are good, but I look at their back row, Cleese Haas, Beau Fermor, and Keenan Palacia. I'm not worried about any of those. I think the experience of Eisenhuth, Jaden Sewer's a wrecking ball, DeBellin's a good defender, you've got some strong boys through the middle, and this is no disrespect to the Titans. I'm sure there'll be some clown that will take this out of context and post up on Twitter and then, I don't know, get the official Gold Coast Titans account going after me. But and it could be an unfortunate cause of events where I rubbish the Gold Coast Titans, they end up beating the Dragons. But I think on paper, you're not overly scared of the Dragons. I think Brian Kelly's a great player. Tanner Boyd is a solid halfback, but you've got Kieran Foran, who says he wants to keep playing at 5'8". Kinney in the fullback role. No Campbell, no Fafita, and then their bench of Verrills, Isaac Liu, Aaron Clark, and Jamin Jolliffe. Like, yeah, there's some solid players there, and they're no doubt going to be a well-coached side under Desi. But I'm not quaking in my boots for the Dragons in round one. Like, I reckon they're going to be chomping at the bit. And this is what we need to remember and continue to reinforce is this is a different Dragon side. This isn't the mentally weak, fragile Dragon side in the past that concedes the first try and you may as well walk out, grab a hot dog on your way, grab a beer and walk out of the ground because they're not going to win the game. This is a completely different side. He's getting rid of the fragilities. There's new players in there. There's a new confidence with the Dragons. So, yeah, I'm feeling very confident that the Dragons can come out, not only put a good shift in over the 80 minutes, Kurt, but win the football game as well.
Yeah, look, as soon as Flanagan got there, and we spoke about this, how Flanagan was being smart enough to go through social media and whatever his skill was with TV or whatever, he was promoting the Dragons before he even got there. Look, I think I've already spoken about intensity, but for me, and again, I'm going another question further forward, Jack, I know you're always worried about time as well, is for the Dragons, be intense, but they need to react quicker and harder to any errors they make. But at the same time, if they are up and they're winning and dominating, and say it's 24-6 after 50 minutes, for a Dragons fan, you're probably sitting there going, oh, yeah, I want to put something on Twitter, but I can't because it's the Dragons. I want the players to give themselves a second.
Yep.
And this is where Ben Hunt and a Cole Flanagan, and maybe even Jacob Little, and even Shane Flanagan through the microphone from his headset up in the grandstand down to his assistants and onto the players, give yourselves a second to enjoy it. Take a breath and understand what you're trying to do. So if you're up 24-6, like you said, Jake, it's a different team. So these are the games you should enjoy. This is, Jack, for you as a Dragons fan, the host of the Red V podcast. Sit back and see, look, okay, this will be very interesting. If it's 24-all with 5 to go and we go to Golden Point, then stuff it. You know, it goes either way. That's crap. But if you're up or you're down, you make a comeback, what happens when it's tight, when you have to win the game, or when you want to control the game when you're up? And I think the Titans there to be beat. Like, no one's talking about the Titans. There was a bit of work about Des Hazard in the media, but the Titans are nowhere near a finished product. Same as the Dragons. There's a game to be won there.
Definitely.
100%. Like, if I was a Dragons player, particularly one of the forwards, I'd be going up there going, yeah, let's go and hunt. Let's go and smash them. Yeah, let's have a go. Because a lot of these guys, some of the guys have been there for a couple of years and been through the shit parts. There's very few signings for this year. So if you want the new signings, you want to impress them, you want to impress your Jersey Flag and SG Ball and Harold Matts players, who I understand, Jack, have had a reasonable start to the season in lower grades. This is where you start at the club.
Yeah.
This is what Flanagan's trying to do. Build the club from the top down. And if you start winning from the top and the bottom starts getting some confidence, this is where it starts. Go up there and smack him. I know it's not very technical as they smack him.
Oh, it doesn't need to be.
But if you want to break that down, you go back to the preseason trials. Your forwards run hard and your halves stay direct. And when it's ready to go for Jacob Little, he overrides his halves, go to the middle, and Sloan is important. I understand a lot of Dragons fans are like, well, you can't take him for the whole year, but he's starting the year. And I can see it in my head right now. I think there's a good win for the Dragons on the weekend, but it's the first 10 minutes. Not the first 20, 25, 40 minutes. It's the first 10 minutes. And then for the Dragons, from what I've seen doing this podcast, it's the roll-around effect from that is that whatever's happened in the first half, it's the last 10 minutes of the first half and basically the next 10, 15 in the second half. But they just need to be smart. And that's where Ben Hunt, if there's less work for him to do pushing the team around with a Flanagan or a Little, Ben Hunt might score 4 tries.
Well, and at the end of the day, Kurt, like, Fox Sports can analyze the game and break it down and make it seem like it's more complex than it is. But at the end of at the absolute end of the day, football is a physical game. If you have a physical forward pack that smacks the other team, that gets over the advantage line, gets quick play the balls, and you dominate them, then you're going to win the football game. And the Dragons haven't been able to do that in recent years. So I'm excited to see the physicality. It's something that, Shane Flanagan coach sides have done previously. And I think he's got some players that can do that. And not just in the forwards. It's not just a case of the forwards being physical. I think, especially coming out of our own end, and even when we get into the opposition half, guys like Moses Sully, Mika Ravalawa, Bird, Lomax, like, they're big bodies. Like, a lot of fans are not very excited about the back line because they don't think the Dragons have much speed. Speed is overrated. It's great to have Tyrell Sloan in broken field play to take an offload and run 60 or 70 metres. That's great. That's where speed can be really handy. But if you go and watch the games in Vegas or go and watch the rest of the games this round, you'll probably be able to count on one hand where a winger or a fullback or a centre has picked up the scraps and ran the length of the field or ran 50 or 60 metres to score. I love the fact that the Dragons' backline is physical, and they're gonna punch it, they're gonna ram it down the throat of opposition sides, whether it's Penrith and Brisbane or Melbourne, or whether it's the Gold Coast or the Dogs or any number of sides. So for me, it's not.
Jack, can I just back that up quickly? You talk about your backline there, right? So a lot of other clubs that have been where the Dragons have completely replaced their 1 to 5 or 1 to 7. You've basically kept your 1-5, and your halfback, because I think even as neutrals, we understand they're good players. They just haven't got it right.
Yeah.
So you have a mature, whether it was like Jack might say 1 week he's 19 or 26 the next, whatever.
Yep.
Just joking. But if you've got a backline like that have played together forever, and Flanagan's trying to work out what the best rotation or what his best combinations are, they are all guys that have been in the Dragons backline for 3, 4, 5 years. There's no kind of blow the club up and start again. Flanagan's walked in and said, these guys are quality players. They just haven't been coached well. So I wonder what they can do. I still wonder about Bird. I know there's a question coming up about Bird and Lomax, but there's enough players on the weekend that know each other compared to the Titans, where I think the Dragons have a chance to run through the Titans and potentially, if they get on the front foot, really put the foot in the throat and put 40 or 50 on. I don't think the Titans are ready. And you know what the other thing too? No one's scared of going to the Seabus Super Stadium.
It's a holiday.
No one gives a shit about going there.
Yeah. It's certainly not Campbelltown.
Oh, mate, everyone's going to get it. Please. Let's go there.
Well, they're scared because even if they win the game, they'll get bashed in the car park. So, in all seriousness, though, Kurt, in regards to the Titans, and we'll kind of have a score prediction after this. What do you see out of the Titans? Is there anything that worries you about them? How are they going to attack? What are your thoughts? What are your interpretations on this Titans side and the way they're going to play?
Look, again, I think Hasler is in the same boat as Flanagan. I think a lot of it has to do with his forwards. I don't think Hasler cares about the points on the weekend. I think Hasler will be the same as Flanagan. It's like if we win 8-10, but he wants it to be intense and his forwards to do the work. So I think, like I said before, Hasler wants his team to play down the middle. I think it'll be a game one between the big blokes, and there'll be some outside chances at different times. Whatever team takes the chance on the outside, Look, I think it's going to be a real tight game. But I'm not worried by the Titans. And this is me. Like, if I was on a West Tigers podcast right now, I wouldn't be saying I'm worried about the Titans. No. I'm worried about what my team's doing. That's what I care about on the weekend. For the round one, Dragons versus Titans, I want my 4-pack for the Dragons to go as hard as they can, win the middle, kick for position, and win the game when the game's there to be won. I think it's very basic considering it's round one, but I don't know about you, but I think Des Hasler would be very similar to Shane Flanagan. They're in the same boat. They're both coming back.
Yeah, Flanagan's twice the man that Desi is.
Well, Des Hasler looks like Mel Gibson from Lethal Weapon, but anyway.
Your score prediction, Kurt, I'm not quite as brave to say the Dragons are going to put 40 or 50 on. I'm going to say Dragons 28, Titans 12. What about you?
Well, I actually just Googled the weather on the Gold Coast on Saturday night. It's sleet, rain, 21 degrees, but humidity and the heat is going to be real bad. So if the Dragons, if they stay direct, they win. If they get lost with Ben Hunt, they lose. It's as simple as I can get it. If Ben Hunt overplays his hand, even though this sounds so weird, if Ben Hunt overplays his hand as the Dragons best player and goes sideways, Dragons lose.
Yeah.
If he plays direct and lets Little, if he plays, or Kyle Flanagan, or the forwards go through the middle, Dragons win.
Well, there you have it, Dragons fans. Straight from the horse's mouth. Some pretty good match preview analysis there from our man, Kurt Woodward. And it should be a cracker. Great to have Dragons footy back on our screens. Saturday, 7:30. I'm sure there'll be plenty of Dragons fans around the country crowded around their TV. And hopefully next week on the podcast, we have a match review to do. And we're talking about all the great spots the Dragons put together in that 80-minute effort. That's our match preview done and dusted here on the Red V podcast. We're going to take another break. And on the other side of that, we're going to have a chat with young Steelers half, Cade Reid. He's one of the Dragons' young halfbacks that's coming through the system. He did a little bit of preseason training with the Dragons over the last few months. He's currently got a hand injury, so we'll speak to him about the injury and how that's progressing, how the Steelers under-19 side has been coping with the 2024 campaign, and the goals and hopes that he has for the rest of the 2024 season. Welcome back to the Red V podcast. Jack Clifton and Curtis Woodward here with you for episode 216 of the Red V podcast. Well, if you haven't noticed, the Illawarra Steelers are doing quite well in the under-19 SG ball competition being run by the New South Wales Rugby League, and we're delighted to be chatting to one of the key components of that side. They're currently injured halfback, Cade Reid, who's been good enough to give up some time this afternoon to chat to us here on the Red V podcast about the season so far, dissecting the loss against the Panthers on Friday night, and also some goals and hopes that Cade has for himself individually heading into the 2024 season. Cade, thanks so much for joining us on the Red V podcast, mate. How are you travelling this afternoon?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on, Cade. Thanks so much for giving up a little bit of time this afternoon. First, I guess we have to ask about the injury and get an update. Some fans will know that you picked up a hand injury a few weeks ago, and we haven't seen you in Steelers colours for a few weeks. Could you tell us what happened in terms of the injury and how the rehab's progressing at the moment for you?
Yeah. The hand, it's all healing well. Obviously, it's a broken bone. Not much I can do to speed the healing process up, but just trying to make sure that the rest of my body's ready to go when I'm back playing.
Have you got a time frame on when you might be back playing with the Steelers boy, Cade?
Yeah, hopefully aiming for next week at this stage, the game against St. George. That's the goal at this point.
It's been a really good start to the season for Illawarra. Kind of unfortunately came to an end against the Panthers out at Windsor on Friday night. I guess kind of sitting on the sideline and kind of viewing it from a bit of a spectator's point of view. What did you make of the performance of the boys on Friday night against Penrith?
Yeah, obviously a disappointing loss after the way we've started, but that's footy, and we probably missed some opportunities to ice the game, but they're a quality side, and they were better on the day. But yeah, we still got heaps of improvement, and we probably definitely could have won that game.
How's the side feeling about the season? Obviously, a new coaching staff coming in this year with Sean Timmins and assistants Brian Norrie and Mark Riddell. Has Timo been, I guess, pleased with the start to the season and those improvements you've spoken about? Is there anything specific that the side needs to work on?
Yeah, they're stoked with the way we've started. Obviously, they're disappointed with the loss as well, but overall they're happy. But they're just, at the moment, we just, as a team, we're going to focus on probably starting better in our games. Pretty much all the games we haven't started great, but we're getting better with it. But that's just the main focus, to be honest, at the moment.
Is that down to anything in particular, you think, Cade, or is that just the way the season has kind of panned out with some of those slow starts in the first kind of 15 or 20 minutes?
Yeah, it's just the way it's panned out a little bit. We've just made some unforced errors at the start of games and given away some penalties and stuff like that. But it's been a theme for us, but we're just trying to cut that out of our game.
It's been a pretty interesting kind of pre-season for you. You're juggling being in Year 12 and obviously doing the HSC and all that kind of stuff, but people will know from the Dragons media that we saw you training in the pre-season with the Dragons first grade boys, as well as obviously playing in the SG ball for the Illawarra Steelers. What was that pre-season period like for you to, I don't know, especially as a halfback, training with the likes of kind of Ben Hunt and Cole Flanagan, obviously coming to the club, guys that have got experience and have played in the NRL for a while? Have you picked up much from doing that pre-season training with the first grade boys?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. It was awesome. Like you said, I was going to school once or twice a week and then training with guys like Ben Hunt and Flano all the other days. That's pretty crazy to me. But just little parts of my game, on and off the field, just trying to watch them and see what they do and trying to implement things into my game that they do, and even guys that are different positions, like blocker and Lomax and stuff like that, just taking parts of the way they play and the way they even train, just trying to put them into my game.
As a young player training with that first grade side, did you have many interactions with Shane Flanagan while you were in there at pre-season training, Cade?
Yeah, a couple. We had a few chats with Flano. He's a good guy. He really wants to build that culture and that winning culture through the juniors, and he was just talking about that with some of the young fellas, and he's a good guy.
For fans that are kind of listening and might not know too much about, I guess, your background and your history, Cade, obviously grown up in the Illawarra region, hence why you're playing your juniorettes for the Steelers. Could you give us a bit of background into, I guess, how you got into footy and who were some of the positive influences on you and kind of where you played your junior footy leading up to now where you are with the Steelers and obviously getting a chance to train with the Dragons first grade side?
So I was pretty much just born into it. Dad played footy his whole life. 2 older brothers all played footy. Mum was around footy, so I was pretty much just born into it and started playing for West Illawarra when I was 4 or 5. Played all the way through until now, until last year. And good club, great club, good development club. They're just
you find yourself in a position now where you've obviously trained with the first grade side, Cade, playing SG ball for the Steelers. What does 2024 look like for you? What are some of the goals that you'd like to achieve over the rest of the winter into the end of the season?
Obviously at the moment just playing finals footy, and obviously silverware is the goal for us SG ball boys at the moment, but definitely just trying to play finals footy. And then once we do that, we can put ourselves in a good position to try and get some silverware. But for me personally, just play good, consistent footy. And there's a few, schoolboy things and stuff like that I've still got to look forward to and after SG ball. And but at the moment, just trying to go somewhere with this SG ball team.
Well, Cade, we wish you and the rest of the Steelers SG ball side the best of luck. I know the St George boys are doing quite well as well, so it's actually really good for the club to have the Steelers and Dragons both doing so well in the under-19 competition. We also wish you all the best with the recovery from injury, and thanks so much for dropping by the Red V podcast this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome to have Cade on the podcast. Really loving getting to chat to some of these young players. And Cade, a lovely young man, and we wish him all the best over the course of the rest of the season. And I'm sure we'll see his name coming up more and more often in representative games and also for the Dragons as well. Let's take a look and jump into your lower grade wrap-up. Now, it is a lower grade wrap-up now. That's thanks to the fact that the New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg sides will be starting their season this weekend. On Sunday, the 10th of March, the Dragons will be playing in both the Jersey Flegg Cup and the knock-on effect New South Wales Cup. It's actually a double header down there at the Collegian Sporting Complex on Sunday. So at 12:15, the Dragons taking on the Bears in the New South Wales Cup, and that's followed up at 2 o'clock by the under-21 Jersey Flegg side taking on the Melbourne Storm. And it's a pretty stacked New South Wales Cup side that's been named for the Dragons. Matt Fierney is in the fullback role. He's trained there all pre-season, and we've seen him play a fair bit of that, even in the Charity Shield match against South. Sione Finau and Christian Tuipulotu are on the wings. Max Fierney and Savelia Tamale, the centres. The halves are Josh Ralph and Jonah Glover, while up front it's Alex Tuatavake and Toby Couchman. Harley Finau is the hooker, and the back row of Dylan Egan, Ryan Couchman and Dan Russell. So some really talented young guns in that starting 13 for the Dragons. The bench of Declan Purcell, Jackson Sherab, Josh Corrick and Tom Freeman, while the reserves are Cooper Roberts and Levi Pascoe. Meanwhile, in the Jersey Flegg Cup competition, first hit out of the season for the Dragons. Wes Pringer's at fullback. Wes, a very talented young fullback, much like Hayden Buchanan, comes from that Gerringong system and won a premiership in the Group 7 competition last year. He's at fullback. The wingers are Kane Barnes and Jack Picciarelli, another one that's come through that Illawarra system. Will Starling and try-scoring sensation Ben Lavender are in the centres. Nick Quinn is the 5'8", and Ashton Ward is the half. Jacob Webster and Jet Liu are the starting front row pair for the Dragons, while Kyan Jalterson is the skipper and captain. He'll be a very valuable player in that number 9 role, probably one of the better number 9s at the club at the Dragons. Back row of Hamish Stewart, who was talked up in the preseason by coach Shane Flanagan. Campbell Watchers and Matthew Al-Hazim will be locking the scrum. The bench, Trey Barlow, Travis Barrett-Hancock, Callum Likefol and Dylan Asanoski, while the replacement player will be Jersey 18 Riley Pascoe. So if you're free on Sunday, make sure you head down there to Collegian Sporting Complex. A lovely, great grandstand there. It's a pretty good place to watch footy, and it's really become the home of lower grade footy for the Dragons, whether it's the Steelers playing there in Maddie's Cup and SG Ball, whether it's Jersey Flegg or whether it's the New South Wales Cup. That's a lovely little ground to be watching football at as well. Not just the under-21s and the reserve grade boys being in action, we've also got a bunch of junior rep matches happening this weekend with both the Dragons and Steelers involved. Firstly, we'll jump to the Harold Matthews Cup competition because there was a victory for the Dragons while the Steelers went down in their affair. The Dragons came from behind. They had a gutsy 22 points to 18 win against the Melbourne Storm. That was their third win of the season. Meanwhile, the Steelers outclassed by a very good Penrith side by 30 points to 12. This week in Maddie's Cup action, the Dragons are going to be in action against the Roosters up there at Woy Woy up on the Central Coast, a 1:30 kickoff there. Meanwhile, the Harold Matthews Cup and the SG Ball Steelers sides, they're over in New Zealand, and obviously because of the time difference, a bit of an early wake up if you want to catch up on how the Steelers are going. 8 a.m. is the Australian kickoff, while a 10 a.m. kickoff for Harold Matthews Cup. And then in SG Ball, as I mentioned, the Steelers in action against the Warriors, 10 a.m. Local time here, but midday kickoff, or 9:45 a.m. here, 11:45 a.m. kickoff for the Steelers boys over there in New Zealand. While the Dragons take on the Roosters, two of the best sides in that SG Ball competition, locking horns at 3 o'clock. That'll be a cracking game. I can't wait to catch the highlights from that one, again being played at Woy Woy Oval. And the rest of the fixtures taking place in the Tarsha Cup, the women's under-19 contest. The Dragons looking for their first victory of the season. They travel up to Newcastle to take on the Newcastle Knights, while the Illawarra Steelers have the bye. Meanwhile, in the Lisa Fiola Cup, that is the women's under-17 competition, Dragons will play just before their Tarsha Cup side up there in Newcastle against the Knights at 11:10, and the Steelers have the bye as well. And finally, in our lower grade wrap, just want to give a quick shout out to the Illawarra South Coast Dragons in both the Andrew Johns Cup and the Laurie Daly Cup. For the Dragons, Dragons in the the Andrew Johns Cup, they were beaten handsomely by the MacArthur West Tigers in round 5, losing by 42 points to 6. I think we spoke about that last week. While in the Laurie Daly Cup, the Dragons also went down to the MacArthur West Tigers by the tune of 24 points to 10. So big shout out to those boys, plying their trade in that competition as well. So that wraps up all of our lower grade news here on the Red V podcast. It's almost time for us to jump on out of here, but we do have a few fans corner questions to finish off the podcast. Always love getting to do these, and as always, you can get in contact with us at the podcast if you want to send your questions through. You can email them to us, redvpodcast@gmail.com. That's redvpodcast@gmail.com. And as most fans know, each Tuesday morning, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, we'll put up a question graphic, and you can comment on one of those to get your questions featured in the podcast each week. But our first question comes from PZ on Twitter, and he said, "Hey boys, as painful as it is to say, the Roosters with strong goal line defence and fitness is a recipe for premiership success. The Dragons lived by this in 2010. Do you think Flano can bring these two parts of the game to the Dragons to match it with the big teams this season?" What do you reckon, Kurt?
Definitely. That's where all bad teams start. You start with your defence and you start with your fitness. Whether it's NRL or Group 6 or Group 7 or wherever you're playing, is that a new coach comes in, and if you don't have the best players to win your games with the football, you have to start being fitter than everyone else. Great question. I don't know what else to say. I think PZ on Twitter basically entered himself. The Dragons will be harder defensively this year. They'll be fitter, be faster this year. And as I keep saying, that they may not win every game, but they're going to win more games than they did the last couple of years because they're fitter. And they're going to try harder. They're going to be more intense. It's a great question, but I think it's already answered. Well done, PZ.
Yeah, and I think we've already seen a demonstration of that. I think we saw it in the first 40 minutes of the Charity Shield. I know a lot of people thought the sky was falling, were speaking about the bomb tries and how South scored all these points against our New South Wales Cup players. But for the first 40 minutes, South couldn't breach our line. Their one try came off a Sloan mistake that literally went into the arms of Jacob Host to score. And then again, we saw it in the first 40 minutes against the Tigers. I think we're already seeing the foundations there. It'll improve over the course of the season. But yeah, I think, all arrows kind of point to an improving defensive line, greater communication in defence, and also a side that is committed defensively. And I think we've already seen the Dragons are a fitter side than they've probably ever been, at least over the last 5 seasons. So yeah, PZ, I reckon they're well and truly on the right track to maybe not being in the echelon of a Roosters or a Broncos or a Penrith side, but that's certainly kind of what they're aiming for in the not too distant future. Next question comes from Stephen Evans on Facebook, and Stephen has said, how much is Sewer going to command for his next contract? So he's obviously discussing a contract with the Dragons at the moment. I think we did see a media report from Fox Sports saying that he was putting off any negotiations until the middle of the season, but a very important player, especially what we're seeing in pre-season so far, Kurt. 800,000, is that kind of a fair number for what Sewer might be commanding at the moment, or is it more than that?
Say 800.
Yeah, 800,000.
No. Look, if he plays well this year, 800. But look, he's been very good for you guys, but he hasn't been an $800,000 player.
But is it going to take $800,000 to keep him here away from the Dolphins or Brisbane or other sides that are trying to pluck him away?
Well, if he doesn't play well this year, I don't think Cunningham cares. I think.
What have you made of him in the preseason?
Sorry?
What have you made of him in the preseason? I thought he was destructive against your boys the other week.
Yeah, pretty good. So, but that's preseason though, right? So he needs to do that for the first 2 months of the season, and then maybe just before Origin, that's generally where they start talking. But if he starts the season well, maybe.
What would you want to see out of him? So let's just say the Dragons.
I want him to win games. I wanted to be 24-all at the 75th minute, and they go to Sewer, which they used to do at South, and it wasn't every game, because he was part of a system. But Sewer hits a line and slam dunks the ball over the try line, slams it down hard, scores a try for the Dragons and wins the game.
So you want him to stand up in those big moments?
Oh yes, that's what you bought him for originally. Even though he might have had some injuries or whatever, but he came in from South and trying to rebuild your club. I think he needs to do more for you than you need to do for him. I might be different, a little bit different to you, Jack. But look, $800,000 is a lot of money, and if Stewart doesn't perform the first couple of months, that's $800,000 you can spend on someone else.
So let's just say, for argument's sake, Sewer kills the first 10 weeks of the season, gets picked for Queensland, plays all 3 games, is very good for the rest of the season. Would you want to re-sign him? Let's say 3 years, $800,000 a season, 2.4, 2.5 over 3 years, or is that number just too much for you?
If he's playing for Queensland, then he's playing good football.
Which I reckon he will. I reckon he'll play for Queensland this year.
Look, if he plays good football, and I think Dragons fans been waiting for the real Jack. Look, you've seen different parts of Jaden Sewer, and you can correct me here, Jack, but he's had some issues at the club too.
Yeah, he's been injured a lot. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So if he plays all games to Queensland this year, then he's worth $800,000. And I think he's more important than a loose Leilua, because Sewer can run straight lines, heat defence, and look, if there's injuries, he can play middle too.
Yeah.
So Sewer's more important than Luce Leilua. But, okay, to answer your question, if he has a great year, 100%, $800,000 is a good value for him.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how he goes this year. I think he's, Polly doesn't get spoken about enough. I think he's a very, very key player for the Dragons on the edge. And the last question, Kurt, comes from Philip Leishman, and Phil has said, where should Lomax be playing? Now, a difficult question to answer because I think we've kind of waxed lyrical about where he should play, and I think he would be a great fullback, and we obviously want him to have in the centres. But I think I guess a more appropriate question is, where should Lomax be playing to help the team? And I guess at the moment that is on the wing. It did kind of seem like fullback or centre was going to be the role for him, but obviously Jack Bird, whether rightly or wrongly, maybe he's getting a bit of favouritism from Flano, or Flano likes him in that centre position for whatever reason. So Zach's going to have to bide his time, or he might even find himself playing on the wing for the whole year. I guess if you turn around in September and the Dragons have won 16 games and Lomax has got 18 tries next to his name and he's doing a killer job on the wing, it probably doesn't matter where he's playing. It's probably Flanagan's looking for him to do a job, and at the moment, I guess he views him on the wing as the most effective position for him. What are your thoughts on the situation and Phil's question?
Yeah, this is the big disagreement I have with Shane Flanagan is, if Lomax has back issues.
Well, I think that was just the 1 week he had spasms. He hasn't had any since. But
fine. Forget the back issues then. Zach Lomax is still your best centre. And I think what you've done is that, and I appreciate Shane Flanagan is going with the team that's going to start the year that he's going with, and he hasn't changed the team. But I think he's weak in both spots. If I was Zach Lomax and I'm trying to be a winger, do I trust Jack Bird to be my centre? That's the question I have. I don't get it. I really don't get it. And the other thing too is when I think about when you pick a new player in a new position, is that what's the reaction of the opposition? And I don't think opposition teams are worried about Jack Bird as a centre.
No.
And that hurts Lomax. If Flanagan wants Lomax to be a centre, put a centre inside him. You almost have to put Zach Lomax inside Zach Lomax for Lomax to understand what a winger is. So Lomax has been playing with Jack Bird for how long? 5, 6, 7 years. And Jack Bird is not a centre to Zach Lomax. Yeah. And now he has to trust Jack Bird to be his inside man. And everyone says, Lomax is too slow to be a winger. And I see that from Dragons fans on social media. He doesn't have to be the fastest winger in the world, but if it creates opportunities, that's great. But I think he's almost cut off at the ankles as well with Jack Bird in the centres. If Lomax was fit, completely fit, I don't think that Flanagan trusts Lomax yet at fullback.
Mm.
And that's the thing. I think Lomax could play some fullback, but I don't think he's quite ready. I think he's still trying to understand wing. You can't put Lomax on the wing and say your center's Jack Bird. That's almost like Lomax is one of your best players, and with all due respect to Jack Bird is only one of your best players when he's playing in the middle.
Yeah.
So, and you talk about NFL depth charts, Jack. Well, we've spoken this before.
Yeah.
Jack Bird as a middle, to me, in my opinion, could be a 92. As a second rower running lines, 89. As a centre, 83.
Mm.
And you've got Lomax on the wing sitting there waiting.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I mean, you need Lomax. If he's going to be a good winger, you need a good centre inside him. And I'd rather, you know what I'd do? I'd swap Ravalawa on the other side of the field and see what happens Lomax outside Sully.
Mm.
I'd rather do that.
Yep.
But let's see what happens on the weekend. But look, if it goes wrong and it goes wrong bad, I think it'll change real quick. But
yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, I think, as much as Flanagan and Bird want, like that, what they want is for Bird to be in the centres. That can change very quickly. If he gets given a bath by Brian Kelly or AJ Brimson on Saturday night, and then it happens again against the Dolphins a week after, it could be a concern. Whereas on the flip side, I guess you look at Bird, a big body, maybe like he's dropped some weight. I know Flano was talking to Adam Hawes on 2GB last night and said he was down to 91 kilos, and who knows, we may see a different Jack Bird and we may see him thrive in that position, but you can only go off the past.
It's not the body, Jack. It's not the body, but.
Well, I'm just saying you've got
how much creativity has Jack Bird got inside his body to create opportunities for Lomax?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting onto. Like, you can only trust what's previously happened, and Jack Bird as a centre has always had defensive deficiencies, and I think that's the biggest thing. I couldn't really care less what he does with football in hand as long as he puts it under his arm. He could take 18 hit-ups a game at centre, and it wouldn't bother me. It's the at the other end that worries me defensively against players that are fleet-footed, have got a step, have got quick ball movement out there. That's my concern for a guy that's had chronic knee injuries, and I think that's when the Dragons will get in a bit of trouble.
Agreed.
Well, that brings us to the end of our Fans Corner questions segment. As always, get your questions into us any time of the week. redvpodcast@gmail.com. Before we dot the I's and cross the T's and finish off the podcast for episode 216, we do want to reveal the Who Am I that we announced a little bit earlier on in the podcast. This particular player played for the St. George Illawarra Dragons between 2016 and 2020, playing a total of 91 games. He scored 18 tries and kicked 19 goals. Prior to that, he played 74 games for the Bulldogs between 2011 and 2015 for 74 games and 30 tries, and then went and played with the Bulldogs at the end of 2020 for a further 5 games, 2 tries and 1 goal. Currently playing with the Salford Red Devils over in the UK, 38 games and 12 tries, 18 games for Samoa with 9 tries. He is a centre, he is a goal kicker, a former Samoa international, played with the Bulldogs, Dragons and the Salford Red Devils, and he was a junior out in Minto and Campbelltown. Kurt, have you got, do you want to reveal who the Who Am I is? Because I'm 99.9% sure that you know who it is.
Yeah, actually a good Minto boy that's actually played also for the East Campbelltown Eagles.
Yep.
As well. Very, very soul-to player. When you talk about centres, could play the game well, and apparently he's still doing it. So it's, from what I understand, Tim Laffey.
Yeah, Timmy Laffey, 32 years of age, still going strong over there in the UK. He was part of that 2018 Dragons side that made it to the second week of the finals, and obviously fell out of favour by 2020 when there was some shifting and moving going on at the Dragons. But on his day was a very talented centre and a very good player. As you can see, over 200 first grade games, you've got to be a pretty decent player to do that. And we we wish Timmy all the best over there in the UK. Probably freezing his backside off, although they're getting into spring soon, so maybe a few warm days around the corner for him up there in the north of England with Salford in the Manchester region of the UK. But Timmy Laffey, the Who Am I this week on the Red V podcast. Kurt, time for us to say goodbye. Thanks so much for your analysis over the last hour and a half or so, mate, and look forward to trading text messages and jumping on the podcast next week when we talk about the Mighty Dragons, mate.
Thank you, mate. Looking forward to a win next week.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. Praying and hoping for 2 competition points and a victory to start off the season. We'll bring you a brand new episode of the Red V podcast next week. We'll have all your latest Dragons news. We'll, of course, dissect Dragons history, but more importantly, we'll review that game against the Gold Coast Titans, and we'll also preview the round 2 match against the Dolphins, amongst a lot more. All these episodes are jam-packed, full of Dragons goodness, and really looking forward to bringing it to you each and every week. But on behalf of Curtis Woodward, my co-colleague, I've been Jack Clifton. Until next week on the Red V podcast, where we're hopefully, fingers and toes crossed, talking about a victory for the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Au revoir. We'll see you next week. Let's go those Mighty Dragons.
Sports Social Podcast Network.